If you've watched any woodworking videos here on YouTube, you've definitely seen shops full of all kinds of tools that look extremely helpful, but no one ever tells you what they are. So today, I've compiled a list of some of my favorite products that will make your life so much easier, like this, that you've probably never heard of. And just like all the other items I'm going to show you today, I regret not buying this sooner. Plus, I will expose one of the tools that all YouTubers tell you to buy, but in reality, may not be your best choice. And if you stick around throughout the whole video, you'll find a little reward where you can get one of the items in this video for free. So be on the lookout for that. Let's get into the first tool. Everyone has a trim router like this in their shop, and they are indispensable to have. From rounding over edges, flush trimming pieces, creating precise joinery, these tiny routers pack a giant punch in a small package. However, they have one huge downfall. Because they are so small, naturally, they have a really small base footprint. Even this DeWalt model, which has one of the largest base plates on the market, suffers from a lack of stability. That's where this comes in. It's the 6-in-1 universal trim router jig, which was actually designed by fellow YouTubers Tamar Hanna from 3x3 Custom and my buddy Jonathan Katz-Moses. This base attaches to at least 9 of the most popular trim routers on the market, giving you an extra large platform that dramatically increases the stability, and large handles make it a joy to use. But you might recall that the name is 6-in-1 router jig, and that's where this thing gets super handy. So what are all those features? Let's dive in. Need to make a super quick router table? Just flip it over, clamp it to your workbench, and you are good to go, which makes it perfect for someone that works on job sites or is just starting out with minimal tools. Are you somebody who likes to do inlay work? Add 2 support pieces under the base, and you can easily flush trim raised pieces of wood to remove the bulk, and then come back with a touch of sanding to get things absolutely flawless. Need to make precise dados, grooves, mortises, or rabbets? Attach any of the included guide pieces to the bottom, and you've got yourself a perfect fence to ride against your workpiece. Need to make super precise circles? Attach these circle cutting pieces and easily route any size circle that you need. Building projects with plywood and attaching hardwood edge banding? Flush trimming edge banding can also be accomplished by stacking some pieces on the bottom. No more awkward trying to balance your router on the thin edge of a board. Need to use router bushings for a project? It accepts those too. I am just scratching the surface of what this thing can do, but I absolutely regret not buying this sooner. Now, these are super popular and often sell out. So if you want one, make sure to grab one while you can, or go ahead and pre-order one if they're back ordered so you don't miss out. Speaking of scratching the surface, you've probably seen this here on YouTube. It's a wood carving disc from Kutzall. They are used to carve wood into crazy shapes. But here's the problem with them. They are basically just tons of teeny tiny carbide burrs. And while they do last significantly longer than using a cheap sandpaper flap disc, they suffer from the same problem that those cheap flap discs suffer from. A ridiculous amount of dust. These discs aren't carving or cutting the wood. They're basically just sanding the wood at an extremely aggressive rate. And since angle grinders don't have dust extraction on them, your workspace will be absolutely filled with dust in a matter of seconds. Definitely not ideal. But that's where this comes in. This is the Arbortech Turbo Plane, and I definitely regret not buying this sooner. It's a single disc that attaches to any angle grinder and contains 3 thick carbide cutting edges that create coarse wood chips, not superfine sawdust. But why would you want one of these discs in the first place? They allow you to create organic, free-flowing shapes into wood that you simply can't do with other tools. I've carved wooden bowls from live edge slabs, carved a one-of-a-kind drawer front into furniture, created a coffee table with the design you won't find anywhere else. Well, actually, I ruined that table, but that's a story for another day. And I carved this twisting side table too. With power carving, you are truly only limited by your imagination. This will take your basic 90-degree flat furniture and bring a whole new life. And gentlemen, if you're trying to get your wife to work on projects with you, this is the tool. My wife is absolutely obsessed with power carving things and loves to make bowls for gifts. Another really cool thing is that since this has carbide cutting edges on it, just like your saw blades and router bits, you can sharpen the edges when they get dull. You can use your standard chisel sharpening stones, or you can pick up a file they make to bring them back to new in just a few swipes. This thing will last a lifetime, unlike those other discs that you just have to trash. Oh, and bonus feature, because the cutting edges do not go all the way to the edge, you can actually use this disc similar to how you would use a flush trim bit on the router to follow templates. This ensures that you don't carve into an unwanted area and is how we were able to carve this bowl. Best of all, I was able to score a discount code for every single one of you to use to get 10% off that you won't find anywhere else. That's down in the description below, as well as a link to all the other tools I'm talking about today. Next is something I would say is an absolute necessity to have in every single wood shop. We've all seen featherboards like this before. Their job is to help hold material against the fence by giving you more consistent pressure for more accurate cuts, and this one from Craig works great, and you've seen me use it for years. But there's a different one that I regret not buying sooner. That's this big green one. Besides looking like a giant squeegee, this featherboard packs a few more features in it that makes it outshine a lot on the market. First, the material that contacts your workpiece is soft, pliable rubber. Not only does the rubber prevent scratches from transferring onto your workpiece, but its elongated size allows you to dial in the pressure you need against the fence better than those rigid plastic ones. The rigid plastic pieces go from virtually no pressure to an insane amount of pressure within maybe like a 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch of movement. Plus, you've got 2 knobs that you have to adjust, which is just too time consuming. This one has a simple thumb latch that you can quickly release and adjust the featherboard and then engage it when you're where you want to be. That is significantly faster and easier. Second, and probably the most obvious, is that it's significantly taller. That means you can use it on the table saw for larger pieces to get registration against the fence, but you can also take it over to your bandsaw to get nice consistent pressure while resawing lumber. And while I don't personally have it because my bandsaw isn't large enough, actually I do have a larger bandsaw that I ordered, but I can't use it yet because it runs off of 240 volt power, which I can't get here in the apartment, but I can get when we move into our new house. But that's a story for another day. They make an extension piece that gives you an additional 4 inches of support, which brings your grand total to 10 inches of support if you're resawing something much larger. But not all of us are able to handle 10 inches. Lastly, both of these featherboards lock in place in the miter slot, but the amount of adjustment from the miter slot of this green one is significantly larger than the blue one. The blue one slides back and forth just a little bit, but this green one has significantly more travel to it. And bonus that you may have not noticed, the blue featherboard requires that you fully disengage the miter bar before removing the featherboard. With this green one, you just pop it in the miter slot, give it a turn to engage the cam, then slide the featherboard to where you need the pressure, and you're good to go. When you're done, just twist the featherboard the other way, pull it out, and you're all cleaned up. I know it's a small feature, but definitely a huge time saver. That featherboard makes it effortless to get perfectly straight cuts, and so does a track saw. The only problem with a track saw is that those tracks are insanely expensive. Like, really expensive. Like, who in the right mind would buy a track that costs almost as much as the saw that's riding on it? I don't know who in the right mind would do that. Those tracks are made out of aluminum, which can dent and bend very easily if you're not careful. So just leaning the track up against a wall or throwing it in the corner is not a good idea for longevity, which I absolutely used to do and dinged up my first track, which is why I regret not getting this next item sooner. What's the solution? These bad boys. These simple track holders allow you to mount any size track directly to any surface, so they're up and out of the way while you are not using them, and also prevent them from being damaged. I've had these ones for a few years now, and they work like an absolute dream. You just screw them into your wall, slide your track into the little lip, push the top of the track back, then turn the locking knob to hold the track in its place. It's that easy. And to take it out, just reverse the steps. While I have them mounted on the wall horizontally, they also come with a bonus piece that allows you to mount them on the wall vertically if that works out better for your specific space. And here's a pro tip. If your walls are already completely maxed out because you work in a small shop like me, my buddy Keith Johnson actually mounts them directly to his garage door, which is a super clever way of utilizing an otherwise wasted space.
What the f***, Eric? That's mine. Total boat, baby.
They work for the smallest or even the biggest tracks you can buy, whether you have Festool, Makita, DeWalt, Craig, or Bosch tracks, and they probably work with other brands too. You definitely don't want to miss out on these. Although having a 10-foot long track is nice, if you're like me, you aren't honestly going to use it all that often. Instead, you'll use a single track for probably 99% of your cuts, especially if you're predominantly using your track saw for sheet goods. But it doesn't make any damn sense why the standard track that comes with a Festool saw is 55 inches long. The entire purpose of that saw is for cutting sheet goods, but the saw is not fully supported when you're trying to make crosscuts on a 4x8 sheet of plywood. Both the front and the back cam on the saw need to be fully engaged with the track to keep it perfectly straight, and the saw should be plunged all the way down before entering the material, and exit the material with the blade plunged down, and the cam should still be engaged with the track. The problem is that is not possible with the standard Festool track. The track needs to be just a little longer, and that's where this next item I regret not getting sooner comes in. I'm talking about this track extension that adds a little over 13 inches of extra track at a fraction of what it would cost to buy an entire new track that you may never really use. Now, if you are someone who somewhat regularly will need to cut between 55 inches and 110 inches long, I would actually tell you to skip out on this and instead buy a second track for your saw and just pick up these TSO rail connectors. But if you're anything like me and predominantly keep all of your cuts right around 55 inches or less, this is for you. The cheapest and shortest track that Festool sells is about 36 inches and costs $105. Plus, you would need to buy $60 track connectors on top of that. So you're out $165 just to support your saw a few more inches. Instead, you can grab this that comes with the track connectors for about half of that price. I do want to talk about these track connectors for a second though. Now, what makes these particular track connectors better than the others? It's simple. They are self-aligning. What this means is that instead of having to remember a specific sequence of events with the connectors that Festool sells, these use simple geometry that ensures the tracks automatically align once you tighten them down. That means no need to put your saw across the tracks while you try to figure out how to tighten the Festool bars down, and no need to align a large straight edge to check if you actually got the tracks aligned. Just slip them in, tighten them down, and you are ready to go with perfectly aligned tracks. But here's one huge tip that I want to share with you. Regardless of if you go with these TSO connectors, which you should, or you go with another brand, always make sure to leave a small gap between the tracks when you connect them. That's because while the tracks are extruded aluminum and are pretty close to being perfectly straight, they are not necessarily cut at a perfect 90-degree angle at the end. That means if you butt them up against another track, it might be causing your extended track to kick out of alignment. About 1/16 of an inch is good enough, and trust me, your track saw won't have any issue going over that gap. So if you're someone that needs a slightly longer track and predominantly cut sheet goods, this mini track extension with the connectors is a great option for you. But if you regularly cut larger pieces, pick up a longer track and then still pick up these rail connectors, but enough about track saws. Remember earlier how I showed you that turboplane carving disc? Well, I failed to mention one large issue with that. And I'm sorry, I definitely should have mentioned it sooner because it was something that you definitely need to know about. Although the turboplane disc creates wood chips instead of superfine dust like those other carving discs, it still throws those chips absolutely everywhere. So unless you have the ability to do all of your woodworking outside, your shop is going to be absolutely covered with wood chips. And because power carving requires a lot of power, relying on a cordless angle grinder like this is super frustrating because trust me, you will chew through batteries insanely fast. That's where this next tool comes in that I regret not buying sooner, and that's this Arbortech power carving unit. On the surface, it looks like just any old corded angle grinder. And it is, but there's a lot more to it. Being corded means that you're running on virtually unlimited power, so you never have to change batteries, and you also get a lot more power than a cordless grinder, which allows you to carve into even the toughest wood species. Plus, it has been designed from the ground up to be the perfect companion to power carving with a feature that no other angle grinders have: chip collection. Attach the extraction hood to any shop vac and you can suck up the vast majority of the mess before it covers your shop. It even comes with another attachment, which is this leveling guide that allows you to effortlessly level large surfaces. Now naturally you're gonna ask, Eric, that's great, but how in the world do I sand all the stuff that I'm carving? That's covered with the power carving unit too. It comes with this flexible sanding pad that helps bend to all the contours you carved in your work, and you can easily attach any Velcro sandpaper that's included with it or that you already have in your shop. But enough about power carving. I know that not everyone has tried power carving before, so let's change gears to something that every single one of you have encountered. So you download woodworking plans online. Maybe you even picked up one of my 60 project plans that I have available on my website for all the projects you've seen me here build on my channel, like this drill charging station, flip-top tool cart, clamp rack, or maybe a piece of furniture and you're supposed to cut a bunch of pieces down to the same length. You know what? Since you're watching this much of the video, if there are any of the plans that you want from my website, use this discount code, appreciation, and I will give you 20, no 30, no 40, no 50. Yeah, I will give you 50% off any digital item on my website so you can get building your next project. Just type in the code appreciation at checkout and you're good to go. Anyway, so getting all of your pieces to the exact same size. Sure, you could measure every single one, but I guarantee there's at least a slight discrepancy between the lengths of those pieces. Maybe it's a 1/16 of an inch or even a 32nd of an inch. Not a big deal, right? Well, honestly, once you glue together a handful of pieces, that seemingly minuscule error will compound itself and cause big gaps in your project. What you need to do is ensure that every single piece cut is exactly the same length. How do you do that? You need a stop block. Now there are tons of stop blocks on the market, but if you've used any of them, you know that once you use them, they move, which completely defeats the purpose of even using one in the first place. Well, they all move except one. The next tool I regret not buying sooner is this. This is the Katz-Moses stop block designed by Jonathan Katz-Moses himself and has zero deflection. Seriously, it does not move at all. The design is simple but ingenious. Instead of connecting at a single point, it connects at 2 points, which makes it impossible to move. It works on different fence heights, has micro adjust capabilities, and is truly the only stop block that I've ever used that does not move, leaving you with pieces that are exactly the same size every single time, so your projects come out flawlessly. I have several all around my shop and even have two from the very first batch he made several years ago that still work today like a champ. Since then, he's upgraded them with beefier knobs and several other upgrades that makes this an item that every single person needs in their shop. Now remember how I told you that you could get an item in this video for free? Well, most people are going to skip to the end of the video assuming that the info they need will be there. But I want to reward you for actually watching the video. If you want to win one of these, there's a link in the description that says leather belt buckle. That link will take you to a page where you can enter to win one of these. In about 1 month, I will draw a random winner and send you one of these at no cost to you. Now, I shouldn't have to say this, but I have to. Do not fall for someone in the comments telling you to message them on Telegram or WhatsApp. That's a scam. Do not fall for it. You will get an email directly from me and I will not ask you to pay for anything. All of it is completely covered by me. Please do not fall for the YouTube scam comments. Without a doubt, you have seen these plastered all over YouTube, but I've found what I think may actually be a better solution at a fraction of the price, and it's another item that I regret not buying sooner. But first, let's talk about this one. This is the Micro Jig Gripper. The entire purpose of this tool is to be a push block on your table saw, which keeps your delicate little fingers away from that saw blade. It's got adjustable blocks underneath so that you can line things up to not get it cut by your saw blade. It's got this extension foot that lets you balance your gripper even when it doesn't have full contact with your workpiece. And it's got these sticky pads on the bottom that grip your workpiece. Here's the problem though. This thing is $50. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that this is something that everyone should have and it makes using the table saw much safer and much more comfortable. But 50 bucks? Seems like highway robbery for effectively a big piece of plastic. That's why I actually suggest getting this instead. This is the Micro Jig Grip Block and it has several advantages. First, it has significantly more gripping surface and it's got a more ergonomic handle, which makes it way more comfortable to use in other applications like on the router table, at the bandsaw, or at the joiner. And it's about 1/2 the price. You're welcome. And here's my favorite bonus feature. It's got these little retractable feet that hook onto the end of your workpiece that give you extra pushing power. Now you should never be absolutely forcing your piece of wood through the saw, but if you are working with a slick material like say epoxy, pre-finished plywood, or maybe melamine, this grippy material is going to slip just a little bit, so having those feet on the end allow you to hook onto the edge of the material and guide it through the saw without ever having to worry about it slipping. And if you are using this at the joiner, after you slide those feet over the end of the board, you can apply ample downward pressure without worrying about slipping and slamming your hands into the knives. Definitely something you want to avoid. These feet automatically retract when you don't need them, and you can even lock them into the retracted position if you're doing an operation where they would get in the way. All of that for half the price? See why I like this one better? Now the one downside is that if you are trying to make cuts that are thinner than about 3 inches, this isn't going to work for you because you're going to cut right through it. In that case, you would be better off with the regular gripper, which is still a fantastic option, just a little more expensive. Or get the best of both worlds and pick up both to make your projects easier, safer, and more enjoyable. Speaking of making things more enjoyable, there is nothing in woodworking that is less enjoyable than sanding. If you're anything like me, the first time you sanded something, you did it by hand, which was an absolute nightmare and made you want to quit woodworking forever. That was until you upgraded to an electric sander that, while still monotonous, made the task at least tolerable. Now, if you remember back to the second tool I've recommended on this list, the Arbortech TurboPlane, you know that you can carve all kinds of crazy shapes and designs into things, which is awesome. But did you take a second to think of the problem that creates? With all of those waves, you can't get a large electric sander into those spots, so really the only option you have is to go back to hand sanding. right? Not so fast. Now, the power carving unit does come with a flexible sanding pad, but it can't reach everything because it's still too large. So I guess you do have to go back to hand sanding those small spots, right? Nope, that's where this comes in. And just like everything else here today, I completely regret not buying this sooner. This is the Arbortech Contour Sander, which is another attachment for an angle grinder that has this flexible head that, like the name says, contours into all the, well, contours of the project. This allows you to get into all of the tight areas that a normal electric sander cannot get into. It comes with a massive selection of sandpaper, but honestly, you can just cut your own pieces of sandpaper, poke a hole in the middle, and that will save you some of your hard-earned cash. Best of all, I was able to score a discount code for every single one of you to get 10% off that you won't find anywhere else. That is down in the description below, as well as a link to all the tools I'm talking to you about today. I am not going to sugarcoat this. Sanding absolutely sucks. It's super tedious, boring, and takes an insanely long time. But that is the perfect time to pop in some Bluetooth hearing protection, which is actually something else that I completely regret not buying sooner. Now, these Bluetooth hearing protection headphones come in tons of different styles, so take a look and see what fits you the best. And there's even a discount code linked down in the description for you to save some money. So you don't have to hear, but instead can listen to your favorite music or my podcast Off the Cut and learn about all the projects I'm working on before they're released here on YouTube, listen to interviews with all of your favorite YouTube woodworkers, and learn about the business aspects of running a business through YouTube. So now that you're done with this video, go check out Off the Cut Podcast on your favorite streaming platform. See ya.